Imagine you're alone in a dark, empty hallway. You look at the bottom of the staircase and you are absolutely certain you can see something in the shadows. You look closer and sure enough, there's something absolutely terrifying standing there and it's staring straight at you. The girl in today's story has a paranormal experience that she will never forget. I'm your host, Severed Soul. Marissa was in her early 30s, and by then she'd already collected more than a few experiences she couldn't quite explain. You see, her childhood had been spent hopping between military bases. Her parents both served, which meant she grew up inside old houses scattered across Europe and the United States. But the first time something truly frightened her was when she was 15, living in a historic house in Portugal of all places. There had been something in her bedroom closet, something she felt more than she saw, a presence constantly watching. When the family eventually moved back to the United States, she dismissed those memories as imagination and adolescence. That was until 8 years later. Marissa became a state park ranger, eventually transferring to a larger park that included a well-known historical site. She was proud of the promotion until, on her last day at her old post, someone said, "Oh, you're transferring to the creepy cult park." She laughed it off. Haunted buildings weren't exactly on her list of concerns. She loved history and she loved learning about these strange old communities. Ghosts were the last thing on her mind. Not for long. On her first day, a volunteer gave her a tour around the old structures. At the cult's peak, there had been more than 100 buildings. Now, only 13 remained. 3 buildings into the tour, and the word haunted still hadn't crossed her mind. Until they reached the old bakery. You see, visitors weren't allowed inside the bakery. They could only peer in through a viewing window. But staff had keys, and the volunteer unlocked the main door to lead her in. The ground floor felt normal enough. Dusty artifacts, old iron tools, the faint smell of wood and flour long soaked into the walls. Then the volunteer guided her towards the stairwell. Marissa climbed only halfway up before it hit her. That same cold, suffocating feeling she'd had all those years ago in Portugal. It dropped into her stomach like a stone. She swallowed hard. "Do I have to go up there?" The volunteer sighed sharply. "Oh, you're one of those." "One of what?" Marissa asked. "People who believe in ghosts." She didn't really know how to answer. She didn't want to sound foolish, and she certainly didn't want to start her new assignment on the wrong foot. "I don't know what it is," she finally managed, "but I've got a bad feeling, and I really don't want to go up there." The volunteer rolled her eyes and led her away, telling her they'd move on to the founder's home next. They toured 5 more buildings, and in every one of them the same uneasy feeling curled through Marissa's chest. But she just assumed it was the bakery incident lingering in her mind. 2 weeks later, she began a week of early morning field shifts. One of her duties was unlocking and disarming all the historic buildings before visitors arrived. She'd done it several times already, and though the bakery still made her skin crawl, she pushed through. But that morning, after unlocking 6 buildings without incident, she reached the founder's home. The moment she stepped inside, the intrusion alarm blared a sharp metallic shriek that filled the entire house. She hurried and fumbled to find the second key, the one that opened the small door under the staircase where the alarm system was located. She had 60 seconds exactly before the police were notified. The entryway was large and symmetrical, 2 old wooden staircases rising on either side. Beneath each was a storage closet, one of which held the alarm panel. She scanned the keys, stepping quickly across the hardwood floor, the alarm screaming behind her. And then she looked up. A silhouette stood in the hallway beneath the right-hand staircase, staring at her. It had no features, no face, no eyes. Just a human-shaped patch of shadow, dense, solid, and darker than everything around it. Marissa's whole body locked up. Her breath stopped. It felt like freezing water had been poured directly over her bones. For anyone who's never experienced anything like this, she would later say, your body doesn't know how to respond because it doesn't understand what it's seeing. The shadow lingered only a second or two, and then it shot up the staircase on the right with an impossible burst of speed. Marissa dropped the keys, shouting something unrepeatable, and bolted outside onto the porch. She paced in circles, hands on her head trying to breathe. But she still had to report in. She grabbed her walkie, voice trembling, and said she'd simply been late disarming the alarm. The ranger at the station responded calmly. It's okay, it happens sometimes. Just finish opening the buildings and come up when you're done. When she reached the ranger station, he didn't lecture her. He didn't ask why she'd panicked. Instead, he looked at her for a long moment and said quietly, You saw something, didn't you? Marissa froze. He had been working there for nearly 20 years. He explained that he wanted her to come to her own conclusions before hearing his stories. But yes, many of the rangers and volunteers had experienced strange things in those buildings. Some believed the place was deeply haunted, others preferred not to think about it at all. But for Marissa, the feeling was unmistakable. She knew what she saw. A shadow with no face, a presence with no sound, and something that moved like nothing she'd ever seen. She stayed at that park for another 5 years, and in that time, she gathered many, many more stories, each one creepier than the last.